It's no secret that Ridley Scott is one of my favorite directors of all time. I mean, the guy's he's just amazing. But it's not just because he's a great director. It's because he gives you a look behind the curtain. A lot of his Blu-rays and DVDs, even from back in the day, they were amazing to see all of the work that it took to make these movies. You know, secrets? No, there's no secrets on a Ridley Scott movie. But you know what? With this Ridley Scott review-a-thon, I still hadn't seen Ridley Scott's first movie. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about The Duelists. Set during the grand sweeping Napoleonic age, an officer in the French army insults another officer and sets off a lifelong enmity. The two officers, Dubert and Feraud, cross swords time and time again in an attempt to achieve justice and preserve their honor. The movie stars Harvey Keitel, Keith Carradine, Albert Finney, and Edward Fox. For a first movie, from a first-time director, this is technically kind of like crazy. It's really, really well done and really, really well shot. I mean, this shouldn't be too much of a surprise if you know Ridley Scott's history. He apparently had done, up to this point, before he even got to make his first movie, he did between 1,500 and 2,000 commercials. So, I mean, the guy was pretty comfortable getting things set up and knowing, visually what he wanted on the camera. And of course, with this one, you might not know this, but a lot of his first movies, he was not just the director, he was the camera operator as well. So he was the guy behind the camera doing the work. The music by Howard Blake is really, really nice. It evokes the time period. It makes it feel very grand, very epic. Very, very nice. I really liked it. I think probably the biggest single issue that I think most people will have with this, especially looking at it from like today's standards, is the casting. The casting is odd. The acting itself is fine, but having a guy from New York and then this musician playing these two French officers, it's a little strange. And on top of that, the rest of the cast is all English, which is, hey, it's shot in France, but using British people. I mean, it's a little strange. The look of the film, though, it really sort of evokes that time period. It looks like old Renaissance paintings in a way, the way that it's shot. And it very much reminded me of Barry Lyndon, since I had seen that one for the first time recently. But Kubrick used the zoom in a very, I would say, it's almost like a staple of 70s filmmaking. This slow zoom and slow zoom out. It's one of those things that I picked up on immediately. And Ridley Scott even admits to it in the commentary that he was heavily inspired by Kubrick's film. Some interesting tidbits that I learned while not just watching the movie, but kind of, looking at the, some of the books that I've been reading about Ridley Scott and, of course, the commentaries. This movie had a $900,000 budget, which is, comparable to about $4.2 million in today's money, which is not a lot of money to make a movie, especially for Paramount. Yeah, that's kind of nuts. But what's interesting is that Paramount gave him 4 choices for the two main characters, for the characters of Dubert and Feraud. And it was Harvey Keitel and David Carradine were the two that really liked the best, and he spent months trying to get them to sign on. And I just think that's kind of interesting that he really didn't have a choice on who was going to be Dubert and Feraud. I'd be interested to know. It's something that he didn't mention is who he wanted for those roles. Probably because at that point, you kind of go, I can't go back. There's no point in bringing up the what could have beens. With Keith Carradine, he had an especially difficult time because Keith Carradine had a #1 hit in America at the time. So he's kind of like, yeah, I need to go on the road. And he was like, no, you got to do this. And Keith Carradine, of course, finally decided to go ahead and do the movie. And with Harvey Keitel, I think it's interesting that he speaks so highly of him, and he said that he wanted to work with him again, and he would. Almost 20 years later with Thelma and Louise. When you listen to a Ridley Scott commentary, you sort of get the idea that he loves to teach. He likes to talk about the process of making movies. And of course, for somebody like me who loves movies and loves the behind the scenes stuff, he's great. And in this commentary for the Duelists, he he's basically talking to like a first time filmmaker. He's almost like he's talking to himself as a first time filmmaker. Like, this is what I would have liked to have known as a first time filmmaker, which is really really cool. And one of the best ones that he said was, he said, "Don't take criticism too seriously, good or bad." And people, he said, look, one of people's biggest criticisms was that the film was too beautiful. And he goes, "I'll take that, because this is a visual medium after all." Albert Finney is only in the movie for a few minutes. If that. But he said that he got Albert Finney to make the movie with a case of champagne, which I think that's kind of cool. Ridley said that according to Paramount, the movie still hasn't made its money back. It only made 7 prints of the film, so it only opened in 7 theaters in America in 1977, that's kind of ridiculous. That is a 2003. This movie, which is Ridley Scott's first movie, it still had made its money back. That's interesting. If you're interested in picking up The Duelist to give it a shot, there's really only a couple of different ways. Of course, physical media is kind of going away a little bit. It's becoming more of a niche thing. Digitally, it has no special features. It's just the movie. This Blu-ray from Australia, I did have it imported, has a few pretty good things to it. Pretty good special features. 2 audio commentaries, one with Ridley Scott, one with Howard Blake, and an isolated score. An interview with Keith Carradine that was done probably in the early 2000s, which actually is kind of interesting. And then this really cool interview with Kevin Reynolds, who directed Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, Waterworld, The Count of Monte Cristo, which is part of the reason why he's involved. He did this interview with Ridley Scott going over some of the cool details and stuff like that. I really, really enjoyed that. The Count of Monte Cristo, just to give you an idea, he used the same costume designer and the same fight choreographer for the duels in The Count of Monte Cristo as Scott used in The Duelists. So it's really, really kind of cool stuff. And Ridley's one of those no nonsense kind of dudes. He's just gonna tell it like it is. And that was a really fun interview. So, do I recommend The Duelists? That's tough, because I think it's definitely a product of its time. The late 70s, this sort of Barry Lyndon-esque kind of take on this story, which is actually based on a true story, which is kind of interesting. There were actually 2 officers in the French army that, dueled each other for years and years. It's kind of interesting. It's based on a short story by Joseph Conrad. But anyway, do I recommend it? I think if you're a film student, I think absolutely this package would be worth picking up just for the interviews and all that stuff. The movie, of course, is beautiful to watch. The pacing isn't great, in my opinion. It's a little on the slow side, as it's a different time. The pacing of movies has changed a lot in the last 45 years. So yeah, it's definitely a thing to think about. But I still think that, if you're a fan of movies, you should watch Ridley Scott. You should watch his first film. One of the best directors of our age. Yeah, it's worth watching. And just sit back and go, wow, this is really well done for a first movie. So I think I'd probably give this for me personally, on my, just subjective, right? Just me. I'd probably give it like a 3.25 out of 4 stars. I really enjoyed watching it. Of course, learning more about the movie definitely helps a lot. For general audiences, I'd probably say that most people would probably give it like a 2.75. They'd probably be like, yeah, it's slow and it's kind of goofy that these 2 American dudes are running around the French countryside, and it's a little strange. I mean, you have to, if you know a little bit about the making of the movie, it actually kind of helps you enjoy it. But yeah, I don't think it's for everybody, but I definitely think it is worth watching. So, The Duelists, Ridley Scott's first movie. Finally got to see it, finally got to take it all in and talk about it. What do you think about The Duelists? Have you even heard of this movie? I mean, some people may not have even heard of it. I'm kind of curious. What do you think about the movie? What do you think about this Ridley Scott review-a-thon that I'm doing? I mean, are you like, some people like, hey, you should like totally stop doing this, but I love doing it. And I love talking about movies and talking about the making of movies. And Ridley Scott's one of the best. So yeah, let me know down below. We'll talk about it. So thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.